And Jill, thank you so much for that beautiful meditation. I think that is the most joyful meditation I've ever experienced. And it highlighted so many things that make the Dharma so wonderful, which is that drive. I shouldn't really use the word drive, but the call to easefulness and letting things come naturally. And it's such a wonderful way to live, especially when you've lived very differently, as many of us have. So I could probably spend untold minutes going from meaningful moment to meaningful moment, but I guess I'm supposed to be a little more linear than that, so I'm going to do my best. But I do want to start off with something that has even greater significance to me since joining this group. Many of you already know that we have the two L's here, Lawrence and Laurie, who stand for love, both literally and figuratively. And I have a card from my affirmation deck, and this one says, I am love. And I'm going to read it because this is what I aspire to. And it is a call that can at least help me very much in keeping me focused on things that are pure and kind and joyful. And the card says, I may not have always made the right choices, but I did my best. I have so much love to give, and everyone around me can feel it. I am given a clean slate every single day to be the best version of me that I can be. I am forgiven. I am love. And that is something I want for myself. I do pretty good with thinking those things for myself, but it's definitely something I want for the other people in my life, the people that I love dearly and care about, like my closest relations, my dearest friends, my sangha, and now the people that I work with at Salinas Valley State Prison. So I'm going to start kind of at the beginning, well, quite literally at my beginning, which was as a little kid growing up in South Georgia. I had parents who were very amazing people, really complex in ways both good and difficult. We were raised in a very conservative Christian tradition called the Church of Christ, which, if you're familiar with it, you might want to run screaming. And if you're not, I can just tell you that it is a group, especially in years past, that strove to follow the Bible literally. So that meant things like no women in leadership roles in the church, no musical instruments in the worship service, things that were pretty strict and exclusionary. Oddly enough, there was also a huge emphasis on service to others, as well as loving others. And so I grew up with this very contradictory set of values where I was really trying to adhere to this set of rules, even though the people that were closest to me weren't often following those rules. I was still doing my best. And even when I was not always doing a very good job of following those rules, I was still really committed. But I also had this really wonderful foundation of love and service. And my father, for all of his foibles, he always taught my sister and I to always think of the other person before judging them or coming to a conclusion about them. Put yourself in their shoes. And even though I grew up in the South, the deep South, I went to a high school that had separate proms for Black people and white people in the 1980s. My family was not a family that engaged in racism. So I feel so fortunate for that, because that was another layer I would have had to undo that's so harmful and damaging. And so I grew up a little bit differently, but a little bit the same. And I was so committed to the Christian path. I even went to a Christian university. And let me tell you, I was all in. If you were living in the Northeast in the early 90s, I might have knocked at your door wanting to study the Bible with you. And I am not joking. So, I was so sure that that was the right path to be on. It was a badge of honor I had during this time. I had a nightmare about United Methodist one time. And that's because, like, the Church of Christ, we were it. We were the people that were going to heaven. And, the path was wide, but few were on it who were going to make it through. And that was us. So I was growing up with this crazy idea, but I had still these other ideas of love and acceptance. And as I continued on my life's journey, I found myself living in New Jersey, which is my favorite place that I've ever lived. It is just a beautiful place. There's so much available to you. And I had the great pleasure to work at a very vaunted institution of higher learning, the Princeton Theological Seminary. So this is a place that trained people in master's and doctoral programs of religious study and philosophy. And like, here I am with my little old Church of Christ religion. I am still pretty hardcore. I'm teaching Sunday school, Wednesday night Bible class. I am making sure that all the X's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And then I'm meeting these people who are a little different, even some Methodists, and they were really great. And one of my closest coworkers was someone who had left the church. Now, we say the church because there was only one, right? And that's the Church of Christ. So Brenda had left the church and become a Presbyterian. And not only has she become a Presbyterian, she was an elder. She was in the choir. I mean, my world was rocked, but she was also this really lovely, wonderful person, probably not going to hell. I was like, okay, well, some things are changing. And I also had a coworker who was a failed Christian himself, and he was a philosophy student, and he challenged me all the time. He was always questioning my ideas. I mean, I had so many ideas that were I was immovable from them, but he was always questioning me. And it was very exciting. Even though I was still sticking to my beliefs, I was open to thinking things. So this is the time I'm in my 20s, when you think you know everything. You don't know how much longer you have to live and how much more you have to learn. And I used to drive by a yoga studio every day, and it was called Simply Yoga. And I finally said, well, I'm going to go and take some yoga classes. And so I started going to these yoga classes. And of course, I had to have a come to Jesus moment. Like, is it okay for me to do yoga as a Christian? And so I decided it was okay. And I went, and there wasn't a huge sea change immediately, but it was starting to chip away a little bit at some of my fast, hard notions. And last week, the speaker talked about how yoga can put you face to face with suffering. And that is real. That really is accurate. So I'm in New Jersey for a while longer before it's time for me to head back home to the South. So I moved to Nashville, Tennessee in 2006 to be close to my oldest niece. And I am at that time, I think I must have been in my 30s, my early 30s. I had just graduated with my master's of library and information science. Even though I had been working in a library, I wasn't a fully professional, realized librarian yet. So I had my degree. I go to Nashville. Immediately, almost, I've joined a church of Christ there too, because there's one on every corner, most of them huge. And I met two of my closest friends who to this day are my closest friends. And we would have feelings checks. And so one of our first feelings checks, I literally wrote down on a piece of paper because my friend put it in an envelope and showed it to me later. I have arrived. Wow, I could not believe it. I believed it though when I wrote it. Years later, when I saw it, it was shocking to me that I felt that way. But that's where I was at that time. I started working at a public library in Nashville, and some of those strongly held beliefs, the chipping away began again. I was so fortunate. I've always been so fortunate to have so many lovely, wonderful people in my life who show me a different way of being. And so it was many years into my time there that some friends and I started a group that we called the Spirit Club. We would meet on Sundays and we would discuss a spiritual book. We might watch a Super Soul Sunday episode. If you have never watched Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, watch it immediately. It changed my life so much for the better. We, of course, as good Southerners, we did the whole essential oil thing. You know, we had to have the doTERRA exhibition and everything. And we explored so many aspects of spirituality. But the thing that was the most critical and crucial was a break for me with these deeply ingrained religious views I had to a path that was much more freeing, which is the Dharma path. That's not to say it was easy whatsoever. And as I reflect now, I'm sad because although the Dharma path is freeing and beautiful and full of love and joy, I was really angry. I was so angry about all the things I had been taught and the ways that I had been told to live and the things that I did do. And it took me a while. Only recently have I really come to terms and been able to reconcile those two belief systems and not still be really mad at Christianity as a whole. I would even put aside books. There are many Dharma teachers employ Jesus as an example or the scriptures, and I could reject those wholesale just because of that. So that was really difficult for me. Now I feel like it, as I said, it laid the foundation for me to have this sense of service and love, but it caused me a lot of trouble for a long time. So I'm in Nashville, worked in the public library. Well, then I moved to a university. I was a university librarian for many years, and I also taught. I taught freshmen and I taught seniors, and it was a Church of Christ school. So you had to be an active member of the Church of Christ to work there. When I started, they interviewed my church leaders to find out that I was copacetic. But funnily enough, as the years went by, they never checked on me because let me tell you, I stopped going after a while. Once I got a little more into other possibilities, I said, forget it. I'm not going anymore. But the more I learned about the teachings of the Eightfold Path, well, guess what? Right livelihood, truthfulness. I cannot really be living a truthful life if I'm kind of lying about my belief system. So and I can love some turmoil. Oh, I love a good reason to just be full of angst and I don't know what to do at this juncture in my life. Very dramatic. So I'm going through all of this. Oh, I also decided I should go to law school. So I'm working full time. I'm going to law school. I'm kind of a mess, but I'm trying my best. My university that I was ready to blow up, they had a program at the Tennessee Prison for Women. It was a college program where they went in there and taught classes with inside and outside students. And I was asked to teach. So I went in, and I don't need to tell most of you how life-changing that experience is. We'll say that until I toured the prison for the first time, I did not have even a real concept of what daily life was like. And it kind of broke down so much of my hardness, because I'm going into this place once a week with these beautiful people who have nothing but love and a desire to make the world better, amidst the thing that stands out to me about Tennessee Prison for Women the most is the smell. And of course, they would tell me what was happening to them every day. And I just couldn't believe that it's 2016 and we're letting people be treated this way. I taught there for the remainder of my time at Lipscomb until I finally had to leave. I was either going to move or I was going to change jobs, and I changed jobs. But I continued to be there with the women and the outside students as well. And eventually the time came for me to leave Nashville. I had been wanting to leave for a long time, and everything aligned. Someone wanted to buy my house, and I was ready to sell it and quit my job. And so that happened in March of 2020. And the other thing that happened in March of 2020 was COVID. But I already had everything planned out. I had 3 spiritual retreats planned. I was going to travel across the country and land who knows where. COVID upended a lot of that, but it did bring me to California for sure. And so I came to California ready to start anew. I was really interested in entertaining any possibility for work. And so I worked at a hotel in Marin County. I passed by Spirit Rock Meditation Center, that the pinnacle of what I hoped to achieve. I passed by there every day. They were closed because of COVID. So it was such a crazy time for me, because like, here's where I'm supposed to be, but this place is closed. But I'm still trying to do my own work. I was still looking for library jobs, but it was hard to do that during COVID. But ultimately, I got a job at a detention facility in San Diego. I was also trying to get a job with the CDCR. Going back to the whole right livelihood thing, it doesn't really seem like that's a great place to think you're going to have a right livelihood. But I knew that I would be able to bring a certain light, hopefully literally, but also just a lightness of being. I knew that I was going to be able to provide library service to people that needed it and wanted it in a way that was going to be respectful and more community-based than they might have been experiencing. So I worked for months on getting in with CDCR. And when I finally did, I was working actually for a private prison contractor in San Diego, which, I mean, this whole topic of mass incarceration, prisons, making money for people, it's a huge, horrible issue. And there's this constant tension. And for me, that was even greater working for a private prison contractor. So when I got the opportunity to go to Salinas Valley, little did I know that I was going into, as Nook called it, one of the toughest prisons in California. I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. And so I went, and it was so different than I thought. I thought California was going to be just the mecca of everything. Like everything was going to be great here. There was not going to be racial tension. Everything was going to be progressive, but I have found things to be so different. And working at Salinas Valley has been a huge challenge, but it has also led me here. I have never attended a sangha. All of these years, I would say I really started trying to be a Buddhist in 2010. I never attended a sangha meeting, ever. But my wonderful library clerk was a member of a group that worked with Nancy, and I met Nancy. And then months later, I saw her again. I was like, hey, what's this Boundless Freedom thing? She tells me, and she says, you should come. And I have literally never attended anything somebody said, you should come. And sure enough, I was there that Thursday night. So I have met the most incredible people at Salinas Valley, people who are on the inside, as well as even some free staff who, despite their worst intentions, are actually helping me on my path. And so now, as I continue to try to refine my walk, I employ every method available to me. I've always got a ton of books going. Right now, I'm rereading this one, Lama Surya Das. Being in California has also exposed me to some wonderful Buddhist teachers that are kind of homegrown. And I came across him when I was in Big Sur. And then the ever-present Pema. I actually stole some of her CDs from the library at Salinas Valley because nobody was checking them out. So don't tell. And then last week, our speaker was a student of Thich Nhat Hanh's, and I said, I have this old calendar and I have Tay's little sayings everywhere. So I'm always trying to just ingest as much as I can to build up within me the goodness and ease that is possible with the Dharma way. So I do want to share with you, to finish, one of my regular patrons at Salinas Valley. Many of y'all know that people have their names, and then they also have yard names. So one of my regulars, his yard name is Blade, and he is so funny. Has so much energy, wonderful energy. And he came last week and he gave me a prayer that he had written for prisoners and staff. And I asked him if I could share it. And of course he was like, yeah, you can share it. And I put it up in the library. And some of it most of it is Christian, God focused, which, okay, that's fine. I can go along with that. But one part really spoke to me, and I think it can speak to us. He says, let each of our minds and hearts be friendly and full of empathy and mercy towards our fellow humans as we travel back and forth on our assigned duties, projects, jobs, and missions today. Thank you.
Thank you.